What's going on, trainers? After 25 long years, Ash and Pikachu's journey for Pokemon is finally coming to a close. And with that, there is a spot left open in the Pokemon universe for a protagonist, and your boy here is ready to rise to the challenge. Say what? Huh? April Fool's is over in the West? Oh, good, because I couldn't commit to that bit at all. Jesus. Anyway, the 5th week of events has come to a close here for the BT13 versus Royal Knights meta over in Asia. And honestly, after looking at the results, the only words I have are, what? So if you're like me and you're trying to make heads or tails of what these results actually mean, then let's take a look at the event's results, a couple of key takeaways, as well as some of the decks that topped over the course of the past week. So diving into the results, yes, your eyes right now are not deceiving you. Crossheart is doing numbers out of nowhere. The timing for this is also just really interesting because only a few days ago, Bandai aired the World 2022 Championship Finals for Digimon, and the LATAM player, Francisco, was actually running Crossheart. By the way, if you haven't seen those matches, we did a quick stream where I talked to some of the folks in chat. We looked at some of the plays that were made as well as just watched the games all together, and I put the VOD up on the channel, so definitely check that out if you haven't. Probably some of the highest level Digimon competition I've ever seen ever, and if you're a fan of the game, you owe it to yourself to definitely go back and watch these. Shifting back to the Japanese events though, Crossheart is doing well for a couple of reasons. First of all, quick damage output, very fast damage. You've got X5, you've got X4, you've got X3s, you've also got the X7s out there as well. Speaking of X7, its ability to just pop something on the board with less DP than itself, which at this point is almost everything in the game, forces Shine Greymon players to stay in raising, which prevents them from doing things like just bringing out a Yugioh Greymon and then Digivolving on the board and just getting a bunch of effects off of that. Additionally, Crossheart doesn't really care if its board gets wiped because the pieces are like Legos, they're going to get saved up under Tamers, and unless you've got Tamer Destruction, they're not really fearing having their stuff taken out. So with all of these things taken into account, as well as Shine's dominance in the meta right now, Crossheart finds itself a nice little niche as a counter. Moving down the list, we can see, Royal Knights has started to slip a little bit, where I think it was just as dominant as Shine Greymon. While it is the number 2 deck, it definitely has started to lose wins over the course of the weeks. Additionally, here we see some of the newer decks like Belphemon still doing well. Blue Flare, I'm telling you, if you want a counter deck for a lot of these like really strong decks right now, Blue Flare is an excellent choice. Sorai is a fantastic option card which stops Marcus in his tracks, as well as the Royal Knights, and what is just pop a Psychemon in there just to be annoying, that makes their lives even harder. So talking about Rosemon for just a moment, I didn't notice this before, but week over week, the win count for this deck has only been increasing. So I hope to see big things from this deck really soon. War Greymon, on the other hand, this is probably going to be the last week that we see the deck doing this well, with the restriction list being updated as of April 1st. And with this week's events being cut off at March 30th, next week we'll get into the actual restricted list updates where I expect to see this deck fall off a bit. Also, Beelstar exists. So this past week, it got the same amount of results as it did within the past 4 weeks combined. I'm gonna keep it a buck. I'm not a Beelstar stan. In fact, every time I see a Beelstar player, I try to bully them as much as possible. But game recognized game, and I gotta give credit where credit's due. There's been a lot of neat little innovations to this deck over the course of its lifespan in the game that makes it stay relevant in the meta. And then rounding out the list, decks that we've seen here before, things like Beelzemon, Mirage Gagumon still doing well, Alphamon is still getting wins up there. Again, with the new trainer cards coming out, I expect Alphamon to be doing super well afterward. Security Control is still doing well, Gamamon still taking wins. And then rounding out the list is just a bunch of decks we've seen before. The one or two interesting things that I will say that happened over the past week is Imperialdramon found a win somewhere, and also another Kintarosmon deck doing well. You know what? I think it's finally time that, even though this deck isn't doing, the numbers that Marcus and the Royal Knights family are doing, I definitely want to take a look at this deck. So if you're interested in Kintarosmon only as an archetype, then keep watching because we'll definitely take a closer look at that deck later. I know you folks were not going to let me get away with not showing off one of the Crossheart lists, and after taking a look at all of them, this is probably the most middle of the road list that I could find, and it's pretty much what you would expect, just lots of really good Crossheart stuff. 2 copies of Superior Mode, 3 copies of X7, 1 of X5, 1 of X4, and I know you folks who got your hands on BT11 cards over there are going crazy with X3 because this card is cracked. Outside of that, you guys pretty much know how the deck works. You have all of your building pieces here with the Shoutmon, Ballistamon, Dorudamon, Starmons, and Sparrowmon. You get your Tamers out there for really good effects like searching, card draw, as well as free memory, and then being able to use those to save your Digimon, and then use them later again as pieces to build your X5s, X7s. It's one nice little Mervomon here just to get some blockers on board when you need to do defense. Of course, it is going to be a little expensive for Mervomon's cost, but hey, 3 blockers is pretty strong. And then finally, the Omega Shoutmon and the G Greymon are going to function as cards that are just different from the basic cross-heart pieces, because you do need different cards to slot up under your Shadowverse X7 to reduce its cost. The next deck we're going to take a look at is going to be Beelstar. While Beelzemon has been doing really well, it feels like this deck is living in its shadow, but this deck does take a lot of cool ideas from the Beelzemon deck's concept and then adapts it into Beelstar itself. Probably the biggest example here is, instead of this deck focusing on, card draw and then discarding, it is focusing on just deck destruction and milling like the Beelzemon deck does. You see that in the form of a bunch of the Impmon cards here, and what's nice about this is that they force your Beelstarmon to have to do less work. Right, these guys can do the chip damage, and then you can use Beelzemon to finish the game off. It also has a couple of copies of Mist Memory Boost in the case that you actually have to pay for one of your level 7 option cards here. You have a bit of extra memory to use at your disposal. And then speaking of memory, we also see a nice little inclusion here of Marcus, where, again, Psychemon is running rampant in the meta right now. Getting rid of those pesky floodgates, plus being able to start every turn at 3 memory is really useful. So the options for this deck include, of course, 4 copies of Fly Bullet. You've got 4 copies of Rivals Barrage here. You've got 4 copies of the, I believe it's called Heaven's Judgment from EX4. This is the card that lets you drop one of your opponent's Digimon's DP by 6,000, and then after that, for every color Digimon you have on the board, you can drop another Digimon's DP 6,000 again. What I love about this deck is that it includes a couple copies of Ruin Mode. You can't understand how painful it is to have your board wiped, and then your opponent just drop a Ruin Mode, so that you can't actually just play anything on the board without it being immediately destroyed in the following turn. It's such a crazy checkmate move. So in cases where your Beelstar can't just end the game, Ruin was going to give you that 1 turn stretch that you're going to need to close out the next turn. And I said it before, I really wanted to take a look at the Kintarosmon focused deck for BT13, and here it is. I'm going to keep it a buck with you guys. I build a lot of decks. I play a lot of decks. This is not one that I built or ever played, and so the amount of research that I had to do going into just figure out what this deck actually does was wild. But for folks who don't know, this deck focuses on Kintarosmon and the total amount of security that both players have combined. You want to get to this nice little sweet spot where you and your opponent have a combined security amount of 6 cards or less. Once you do, all of this deck's effects start to go online. Typically what this deck does to achieve that is that you mill your own security first, and then once you get enough effects going, you start to hit your opponent's security and then also recover a little bit on your side. You've got a lot of your level 3s just giving you nice little value and resource, things like the Bakumon, who has Inheritance Draw. You've got the Kudamon here, who's a fantastic searcher, giving you 1 vaccine and 1 yellow tamer. You've got your Leorumon here, who gives you memory whenever you drop a security. You've got the Liamon here, who gives your opponent's Digimon minus DP. You also have the new Chirinmon from BT13, who has the new keyword effect that has really never been talked about, that's called Barrier, where if this Digimon will be destroyed by battle, you can instead drop a security and then the Digimon stays. You've got your Bancho Leomon, who then just gives you the ability to play Tamers for free. And then once you get your Tamers down on the board, you things like your TKs, you're going to get your Richard Sampsons, you're going to get your Marcus's dad, I assume. And then once your Kintarosmon gets down, you can start to recover, and you can start to stack your own security with cards. The cool thing about Kintarosmon is he lets you choose the card you want to put at the top of your security. And what's even better is that this deck features cards that, even if they're milled from security, if they're just discarded from security, they activate effects. So in the past, where you could just use a card's effect to destroy security without actually having to check the security card at all, these cards bypass that. And while you're probably not going to be winning a world championship with this deck, if you're looking for something to just play for fun, something a little bit out of the box, something out of the ordinary, give Kintarosmon a shot. And with that, we're going to wrap up this week's BT13 Meta Report. Let me know your thoughts about the results down in the comments below. How are you liking the adjustments that Beelstar's made? Let me know if you think that Rosemon is still going to keep seeing more wins over the course of the next few weeks. Again, this is going to be a long meta. I think the next set doesn't come out until June. We are, however, going to get a couple cards introduced to the game next month in the form of the limited packs, which give out the trainers as well as some really fantastic and very useful cards for some archetypes that haven't seen a lot of play. And then we've also got the starter decks coming out at the end of May. Those are going to be really interesting because they have the new ace effects as well as the new counter effects to the game. If you want to know more about everything I just talked about, I've made videos for all of that and put them on the channel, so definitely check those out as well. Anyway, folks, I'm going to get out of here. Before you get out of here, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.